my
Welcome.
sister and a Christmas to make up for all the recent ones I'm missing while I'm touring.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mike Files, streaming live from 52 miles east of Yellowstone Park in Coyote, Wyoming. We have Mr. Nicholas Piazza with us tonight. Welcome, Nick.
Hey,
it's good to see you,
me,
my
man.
Brother.
Good to see you.
Man, it's been a long time. It's been a very
has.
long time, man. So, Nick's back here. You know, we've been looking at a lot of things that have been going on in Ukraine and the news. I've been kind of hesitant to talk about them because I don't know a lot about it, and I try not to do that. So, if there's an expert around,
that's always a sign of a smart person when they understand, what they know and what they don't know, right?
It's a sign of somebody who's been a jackass too many times. You know what I mean?
That's a good way to learn, right?
It's like, yeah, I've been on jackass status too much. So it's like, we're going to try and cut that shit out.
Right.
So anyway, well, welcome, man. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You're heading back tomorrow, huh?
Yeah. I'm heading back to Ukraine. We have offices there, we have employees there,
right.
Family there, investments there. So
your wife's from there, right?
My wife was born in Kyiv, so her mom's there. So I'm looking forward to getting back, kind of sussing things out a bit. I made my whole career there. Most of the income that I generate comes from there. So to me, I take those things kind of seriously, and I think it'd be a bit irresponsible to leave those guys and just kind of sit here in their time of need. So
that's pretty stand up because the way they're painting that is it's a.
The weird thing about it is that it happened once, like in April last year. Then there was a run up, and then they met and all this. Yeah. The first time, the Ukrainians were really nervous. I noticed it when I was in Kyiv. Right, I came in April. Everybody was watching the news. Everybody was trying to figure out what's going on. This has been going on probably since November, December. There's been kind of this build up.
I think it was late November when this kind of started to surface
and
as a thing.
And right now the Ukrainians are way more chill than the Americans or the Europeans, to be honest. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. But I think with the evacuation of the U.S. Embassy, with the evacuation of the U.K. Embassy, I just see among our clients that have like big businesses, they're putting security measures in place. They're planning for Plan B.
Right.
I kind of figured this was a good time to go and make sure that we had kind of a Plan B for ourselves as well. So,
what do you anticipate? I mean, you would know better than anybody that I've had contact with. Obviously, I mean, and I'll just put out what I think most of us that live here, what we've seen is that there's 100,000 Russian troops right over the border.
Right.
They're doing military drills. The United States has 8,500 troops, that they're saying they're ready to send over there. We've apparently been sending, different, munitions and equipment and that over there. And I'm like, how in the hell are 8,500 troops going to stand up against 100,000? And it's like, is Russia are they posturing? Or are they, it's like, what in the fuck is going on, man? It's like, everybody's all freaked out. And quite honestly, that's why I've been hesitant to talk about it because it's like, it's hard to find information. So that's why I reached out to you.
No, I appreciate you.
I was like, oh shit. I was like, I need to get a hold of Nick and see what's up. And then, so, and then I saw that, you had a larger role in a lot of different things over there, and it's like, so I'm happy to have you here to shine a little light on it. And maybe you can, inform the general public here about what
what's
the fuck is really happening. It's like, is this all just a fucking?
No,
is it a wag the dog deal or
No, and that's the $100 million question. I'm very proud of my Ukrainian roots. I'm very proud of the career I've had there. And I got no special insight. I'm kind of like everybody else. I don't think anybody really knows except for Mr. Putin what's going to happen next. But I think, you mentioned the 8,500 U.S. troops that are on call. I actually think that was a smart move. Not so much, they're saying they're not going to go to Ukraine, but, places like the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, they've all been asking for more U.S. troops for a long time because, people kind of see that as a hair trigger. So, if Russia comes and has to face off against U.S. troops, that's a big no-no. Whereas, like, shooting a few Estonians, they might get away with, right? So having those there is a good thing. The situation, from what I've heard is that, it's one thing to march a bunch of troops around. It's another thing when you stockpile fuel, you build big ammunition depots, things that allow you to do battle for a long time, a sustained period of time. And I think that's kind of been the big change since the summer. Right now, Ukraine's in this weird spot where they're trying not to have people panic. So they're trying to be cool. But at the same time, I have friends that are, they're office workers, right? And they're going out and, joining defense battalions. We have employees that are doing small arms training after work. So people are taking it seriously.
Is that like militia type?
Yeah.
So it's not part of the Ukrainian military. It's like a subsect?
There's both.
Okay.
Right? So you have these kind of volunteer battalions and you have regular army.
Boy, that can lead to the whole can of worms, can it?
It's a dangerous thing, and I think what happened last time though was in 2013-14, the Ukrainian army. If you joined the Ukrainian army, you never really expected you were going to fight anybody, right? Like who was going to attack Ukraine, right? Most of those guys were like planting potatoes for generals, building them, houses, those kinds of things, right? It was kind of a very kind of slack gig. So what happened in 2014, the regular army kind of got a whipping in the beginning. And what was really hardening and probably changed Ukraine forever was all these people just kind of leaving their offices, going somewhere, grabbing a gun, and just sorting it out, right? And it literally was these volunteer battalions that pushed the Russians back.
It was like some Paul Revere shit. Huh?
Yeah, it was nuts. And
the Minutemen.
It was literally people taking things from museums, right? Like that was happening. Wow. There was a military hospital not too far from our office, and you'd see these helicopters come in, and they'd be all different colors because they kind of cannibalized and just put these helicopters together, and they were flying out to the lines, loading people up and bringing them back. Wow. And it was an incredible experience. You had these kind of Russians showing up that were not organized army, just trying to create chaos. So they were seizing buildings, they were ransacking stores, and you had just locals setting up these battalions and basically
fighting it off.
Yeah, basically defending their space. I have a farm in this small town. Yeah. And one of the things that we did, some guys that were wealthier in town, they got together and they were like, look, we need to keep because when the central government collapsed, there were no salaries being paid. Ukraine, everything comes from the center. It comes from Kyiv out. So everybody pays their taxes to the center, and then the center decides who gets what. There's no local tax. Okay. So policemen, doctors, all that wasn't being paid, and we all took like a little sector. And I was asked to kind of sponsor the police. So I was fueling their cars and paying some salaries, things like that. And in the end, it turned out to be a great thing because I made a lot of friends with them. So now, if I'm at the bar and I need a ride home, I actually call the police.
That's awesome.
But so that was a crazy time. We also had like the no good nicks, right? Like kind of your local kind of hooligans, gang members, soccer fanatics. They were policing the street and keeping order.
Yeah.
It was just crazy, right? Like everyone came together. It was one of the most cathartic events I've ever seen. So this time, the difference was Russia never used air power. So Ukraine was able to basically hold the line just based on grit, right?
Right.
And this time, it looks like, what everybody's expecting. Ukraine has some air defenses, but they don't have ballistic rockets.
Now, what's Russia's interest in Ukraine? Because I saw... excuse me, Canada's, the ambassador from Russia to Canada, his name is Oleg, I can't remember his name. Anyway, and I watched him the other night in an interview, and he did this body language, where he said Russia has no interest in Ukraine, and he kind of did this weird smirk, and I've got the ability on my, on my software to slow it down and look at the tiny ticks, and this guy... He said they had no interest, and he did this smirk, and I was like, "This dude is straight up lying." Like, what is Russia's interest in Ukraine?
Well, it's funny you say that because a guy that I respect a lot named Tim Ash, he's an investment advisor in London, and he's been covering Ukraine for probably 20 years. And he always says, never believe anything until Russia denies it. So
right. And also what I always look at too is when somebody says something is absolutely not going to happen, that the chances are they're lying. And that's what this guy said. And he kept repeating that. He said, Russia has no interest in occupying Ukraine. We don't want to do this. That's not going to happen. He even went so far as to say it's not going to happen. And when somebody says that, to me, that's when it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then he did that, you know, and I picked out a number of different facial tics and I showed them to some people. I was like, you know, I've kind of gotten it. I learned that in prison, right. How to read somebody, right. Like if you ask somebody a question, right, and they do this up and to the right, if the eyes go like this,
they don't want to answer.
Yeah, they're lying,
right.
Or they go down. But if it's a right-handed person and they go to the left, then they're not lying to you. And I learned how to pick up, you know, tics with people because
I suppose that was
everybody's telling a lie,
yeah.
You know, and yeah, it has, and it's funny because now I can pick that up with anybody, you know. It's like, and somebody will lie to me, I'll be like, dude, I was locked up with some of the biggest con men in the country. You think that you're gonna be able to get over on me on this shit, you know?
I've been with the best.
Yeah, it's like, dude, come on, man. But that's what I saw with them, and I don't understand a lot about the region. And I don't think a lot of American people understand a lot about the region.
I think it starts with the fact that most people call it the Ukraine, right? Like,
instead of Ukraine.
Instead of Ukraine, right? So that's, you know, and I think, you know, even when I went to college, I actually was in kind of like a homeroom with a Ukrainian girl.
How did you end up over there?
It's
a long story.
A long story, but a fun one. I actually finished school in Chicago, and right. I was kind of lucky to live with these kind of two art majors that I kind of grew up with at Lake Forest College in Chicago. And, you know, I was a jock. I played football. I thought like, you know, my life was going to be like being a football coach or something like that. I'd be 24 years old, have a baby.
Following your dad's footsteps.
Kind of stuff like that, right? And I run into these guys, and they didn't know anything really. You know, they weren't into football, you know, but they were fine with it, right? And I was like, how are these guys surviving? You know, they had an interest in sports. And, you know, they taught me a lot, right? They took me out to the underground music scene. They got me reading books I probably would have never read. You know, we were discussing art. And, you know, when I graduated, they were like, look, you know, you always wanted to kind of go out and see Europe. You've been reading a lot of Hemingway, all that. Like, why are you going to take this job like in Chicago? Why don't you go do something more?
Right.
And I was like, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I came back to Cody after being there 4 years, almost never coming back. And
I think I ran into you right about that time. I think you and I happened to be here because I remember running into you.
Yeah, it must have been like 2000. Yeah. And I was working the yard crew. My boss was like a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
And, I saved up maybe like $1,000, and I took a train to New York.
Wow.
And stayed at a hostel until I got a standby flight back when that was still possible.
Right.
And flew to Spain and was doing pretty much anything I could. And I saw all these cats that were basically, you know, like living a pretty good life, teaching English as a foreign language. And I was like, well.
Oh, you were doing ESL?
And so I got certified, and I was doing that. And when I looked around, like if you went to Paris or Italy, you know, they weren't going to really pay you anything because everyone wanted to go there. But if you were willing to go somewhere a little edgy, they'd pay you something.
Sure.
So I was like, I'm going to go to Moscow. I'd studied, one of my senior theses was the state replacing God.
Yeah.
And where else was that more prominent than the former Soviet Union? And I was like, I go check that out. So I headed over there, started teaching English. I was doing mostly business English, ran into all these guys that had businesses and stuff. And
you've read Matt Taibbi, right?
Yeah.
Because Taibbi was over there.
He was a legend when I was there.
Yeah, he had
The Exile.
The Exile. Yeah.
Oh man, I read it every week.
I
chose what bars to go based on that.
My brother sent me when I was locked up. He sent me the books and he always sent me I mean, and I've been a avid follower of Matt Taibbi. Incredible career. I used to see him at the bars. Just a great guy.
Yeah, I used to see him at the bars. Yeah, he doesn't know who I am, but I was always like, we'd be like, oh my God. it's him.
It's the most famous expat in the world. Yeah.
They had a great story where they interviewed.
Because him and Katie Halpern, they stopped with the Rolling Stone. And
oh, did they leave? I didn't know.
Yeah, because they had that show, The Useful Idiots, or whatever, with I think it was called The Useful Idiots.
Oh, see, I must have
with the
fallen
Rolling
off.
Stones, but yeah, I saw her on. She was on somebody else. And you always see Taibbi. You know,
Yeah, he had a great interview with Anna Kournikova's vagina. That was
yeah.
that he actually got sued for, right?
Yeah. Oh, that shit was hilarious. The book oh God, I'm trying to remember the name of the book where he infiltrated the speaking in tongues. What the fuck was the oh God, the great I'm trying to remember
I don't think I read it, man, but yeah.
Well, he'd gone down to like Texas and he infiltrated these,
I do remember that. Yeah,
like these Pentecostal Christians were speaking in tongues and shit, and he like infiltrated them and like
those guys. And
what the hell? The great, oh God damn it, I have to look that up. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, he was those two guys. He had his partner, and I can't remember what his name. And that guy didn't really go on to much, but Matt was always the smart one,
right?
And they had a guy named John Heisel who they called Flounder.
Yeah, Flounder.
And I still work with him today. He's
really?
my broker.
No kidding.
He works for.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
He works for a Russian investment bank out of New York.
That's great.
And he's a wonderful human.
Yeah.
So
I've read most of his books. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's crazy. Anytime I see him, I just, he's got such a, I mean, he's just so, he's kind of just demure, I mean, and just factual about everything. And he's a big guy too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was quite a basketball player, wasn't he? I mean,
I didn't know that.
From what I understood.
I kind of, we used to call that Neverland, right? That period in Moscow, because it was just like, you were in this weird place that, like, everything was changing.
Yeah.
And it was kind of no rules and no.
Have you seen Bert Kreischer's have you seen?
Yeah, I get a lot of.
The Machine?
I get a lot of references.
Do you?
They say I have an uncanny.
I'm a machine! Yeah. And I fuck cats.
Cats.
The first time I saw that shit, I was just like, what in the fuck? And then come to find out that whole story with him was, I mean. And he said that was basically the breaking point of his career because he was ready to quit comedy.
And then it just shot him up. Huh?
And he came out and he realized he was sweating through his clothes. And he's like, fuck it, I'll just take my shirt off. He goes out there with he got like the watermelon flick it gut, it was like and tells that story. And everybody just lost it. And then he said what happened was one of the teachers that was actually on that trip got on social media and verified it and said this actually did happen.
The machine.
Yeah, I'm the machine. Fuck that bitch. This is Russia. Oh man, what a great sketch. I mean, yeah, and I mean, that led to a whole career for him. I mean, he had a show on. I don't know what it was, the Traveler, Discovery. They've sent him all over the place.
Yeah,
doing goofy shit, I mean, but it was a great story though. He's like he said he's taking Russian at Florida State or whatever. And, the teacher said if you go on this trip, you'll get a minor. He's like, fuck it, let's go to Russia and fuck some minors. He's like, you do understand I don't speak the language. He said, yeah, we know. So you know what it's like going and taking a test and being like an immigrant at DMV? I mean, that's the crazy shit about life, man. It's just like just something like that can change a person's life. Just something like I'm going to take my shirt off and show my fat ass belly and tell a fucking story.
A real story.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, boom. I mean, because he was getting booked at big venues and he just wasn't selling tickets and he was, like he said, he was ready to quit. And then all of a sudden it's just one story.
No, it totally makes sense. I mean, and life's just filled with those little stories. Like when I went to Moscow, for example. So I had a job offer in Trieste, Italy, and then Moscow. And so I flipped a coin. I got really drunk and flipped a coin, and it came up Moscow.
That's how you made the decision.
And the rest was kind of history. So, I mean, we were in Barcelona partying, and we decided, since it was going to be my last night,
Barcelona.
and we went down the Ramblas, and we decided to go down to the beach, and we all kind of stripped off and went into the ocean.
Yeah.
And we're swimming out there, and I look back, and there's like a kid rustling around on the beach, and so we go running back to the beach, and they were gypsies, and they took off with our clothes.
Right.
So I had just enough clothing to kind of cover myself. And luckily, I didn't take my passport with me, but I lost my wallet. I lost everything else.
Shit.
And I was supposed to catch a flight the next day. So I had my ticket and my passport. So I was like, how am I going to get to the airport? So luckily, I had a compact disc player. So I just ordered a taxi, got in it, got to the airport. And I didn't speak Spanish that well. So I was like, compact disc player. And he was basically like, fuck you, man. Like, what the hell are you talking about? And I was like, I got nothing. And he was like,
You got this.
he was like, fuck you. And he let me go. So I get...
What's he going to do?
Right. So I get on the plane. It's Aeroflot. My first time ever flying Russian Airlines. They still allow smoking. And what I didn't know was the rule was once you take off, everyone goes to the tail of the plane and smokes. Yeah. So it's about a 5-hour flight to Moscow. And I was in the back of the plane. So pretty much everyone on the plane just smoked on me. The whole time? Flight. It was intense. I get to Moscow. It's a Friday or Saturday night, I don't remember. But
and you got nothing.
I got nothing. This Armenian guy that works for the school that I'm going to work for picks me up, takes me to this, Soviet building downtown, and it's got a big steel door. And I'm like, hey man, is this building? Are we in like a good neighborhood? And he's like, oh yeah, this is great. So I get into this apartment. I don't know like who to call, what to do. Right. I got nothing. And luckily, whoever lived there before me left like some. Like,
did you speak Russian?
No. So I had like some macaroni in there, and I lived on that for like a day. Yeah. And on Sunday afternoon, my boss calls the apartment. And he's like, "Hey, come into the school, and we'll kind of get you set up." And he's like, "Yeah, just go down to the metro station." I get in the metro, and there's all this wording on the walls, but there's no English. And I realized I have no idea where I am, where I'm going. And he was like, oh, and there's a couple tokens for the metro.
But he spoke English.
Yeah, he was a British guy. So I go back to my thing. He'd give me the number. I call him back, and he's like, hey, so you go. And in Russian, a big H is like an N. Right. And then a big B is like a V. And he's like, you need to go to, basically, it looks like Hobo, but really it's Novo. Right. That's the station. And that's how I found my way to my first day at work. So
holy cow.
It was a bunch of, like, I think... What I learned and what I always tell people is the people that were successful living abroad were the people that didn't want it to be like home, that were looking for adventure, because everyone else just kind of complained, it's not like home, it's not like home. So
right. Why would you want to do, if you don't want to go someplace that's like,
this sucks. Like I just tried to look at it as like every day was a new adventure. So back then, everything was kind of general store style. Yeah. So when I went into like a shop, you had everything behind the
clerk
on the wall behind the clerk. And I remember getting eggs for the first time, and I know the word for egg, so I had to do like a chicken dance, and like and like other people from the shop were like, it was like charades, they were like, and then they were like yitso, and that's the word for egg in Russian. And I'll never, after that day, I never forgot that word, because then I knew how to buy eggs.
You're like the immigrant at the DMV.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I had a when I lived in Seattle, I was introduced to this who turned out to be a great friend of mine, Sergey, and that dude cracked me up. He spoke very broken English, and his story was he had escaped from Russia, gone all the way across Poland in like a cardigan sweater in the wintertime, and wound up in Canada. And all he wanted to do was end up in the United States. And they wouldn't let him cross the border. And so he took a gun one day and went up on the steps of the Capitol in Vancouver and pointed it at himself and demanded that he'd be led into the United States. And they did. And so I met this guy.
How crazy.
Right. And so I met this dude. He was hanging out with a couple of my good friends. And we used to go down to this place called Golden Gardens in Seattle. It's right on the beach in Ballard. And we'd go down there on the weekend nights, and we'd start a fire and hang out. And, Sergey shows up, and he comes up and says, hello, I'm Sergey. I'm like, hey, Sergey, how you doing? I'm like, and we start hanging out, right? And so we go on a camping trip. Like we would go on this camping trip every summer up to the mountains in Washington State, Blewett Pass, and all of us would go up there. And this particular year, we were having so much fun that Monday came along and we weren't going back to work. So we didn't have cell phone service, so we had to drive down to Ellensburg. You know, this was back in the day when cell phones weren't what they are now. And so Sergey didn't have a cell phone, right? So we get down into Ellensburg. Everybody calls their boss, makes up a fucking lame-ass story. And Sergey's like, I need to borrow a phone. You know, I'm like, oh, here you go, man. And so he gets on the phone, and we're sitting there in like the parking lot of a Jack in the Box or whatever, you know, and he gets on the phone. He's like, you know, ring, goes to the, you know, like, yes, hello, boss. This is Sergey. I'm not be to work today, so thank you and fuck you. And he fucking hangs up, right? And he hands the phone back to me. He's like, thank you, Mike. And I'm like, sure. And I'm like, I'm laughing my ass off. I'm like, dude, did you really just tell your boss that? And he's like, hey, he's not really boss. And I'm like, okay. So we get back, and Sergey and I start hanging out some more, right? And so one day he calls me. He's like, hey, come to my work, Mike. Come to the pizza place. I got job for you. You know, and I'm like, okay. And so I go up on Lake City Way, and there's this pizza place. And there's like a bunch of Mercedes parked outside. But, there, you know, you go in and it's all cigarette smoke.
Right.
And dudes sitting in booths. The lights aren't on. These guys are drinking vodka. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. I go in, you know, guy accosts me. He's like, what are you doing? You know, and I'm like, I'm here to see Sergey. You know, and he's you know, yells at it. Sergey. He's like, oh, no, you know, he's okay. You know, he brings me in the back and because of his briefcase, you know, and he opens it up and there's this rubber banded stack of cards, like, but there's no writing on it. They're like white debit cards, but just with the magnet strip on the back. Oh wow! And a rubber band, and he hands me a pile. He goes, "You take these to every ATM, and the PIN number is on the back. You take out as much as you can. You keep 10% and bring the rest back to us." And I was like, no, dude. Wow. And I was like, nah, dude, I got nothing to do with that shit, you know? And he was like, you know, I mean, they're all like looking at it. I was like, no, dude, I'm not doing that shit. Come on, man. I mean, we still hung out after. I mean, but they were totally running this joint, you know? I mean, right there in plain sight. I mean, it just looked like a pizza joint.
Right.
But I mean, these cats were just in there, just balling, you know, doing whatever they had to do. And I mean, I was careful around Sergey after that. Yeah. But I always thought, man, what, you know, I mean, and listening to his stories about, you know, how he got, you know, because basically he defected. Right. And I was like, damn, what a crazy ass life. And then to end up in Seattle, Washington, you know, he's a cool ass dude though. Cool as hell. And all those guys there too. I mean, I got to know a lot of those cats. I mean, they were sketchy as hell. I definitely didn't ever get involved any of their haberdassery, you know. I mean, I made sure that I was like, there's no way I'm going to get involved with whatever the hell these motherfuckers are doing.
And that was a certain, you know, you mentioned before we went on about like Matt Taibbi and stuff. He had a great statement about what it was like to be a young man in Moscow in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And he said, it's kind of always like you're a hero in a novel or like a superhero because, you know, you'd go out for these evenings and things would happen that like in the U.S. or somewhere else would be completely insane.
Right. But that was normal there.
But it was normal there or even, you know, some of it was incredibly cool. Some of it was incredibly terrible. But you'd always get to go home every night and go back to like whatever you thought was normal. But it was like this adventure that you got to go on. And as a 20-something young man, it was a whole new different thing for me. And that's why I think, you know, one of the life lessons I took from my time abroad was probably that there's so much value in when you have a chance to kind of leave the society you're from.
Right.
And look at something else. And then look back on your own society and be like, okay, because there are some good things, and then there's some things where you're like, okay, so this is bullshit. I don't need to worry about this.
Right.
This is important. This isn't. I can see the contrast
Gives
here.
You perspective.
Right? And you come back and you're like, well, I think it makes you a little more, understanding, well-rounded in like your willingness to kind of understand things. We talked a little bit, before we went on about like racism and how it was for you.
Right.
And I'd say that, like that was weird for me to always be kind of the outsider, right? And how people take you in or they don't take you in. Or, how much the Russians used to always tell me like, hey, well, you're not Russian, you can't understand. That used to fucking drive me crazy.
Right.
I'm like, no, I'm here, I can understand. And I really think like a lot of the problems we have in the U.S. could be solved by just, because we're so insular, we're so U.S. focused, just by people, not going on vacation, but taking a year and just living somewhere, right?
Sure.
I think it's just a really healthy thing.
I think the best thing that I ever did was, and I did this numerous times. I don't even know how many times, but the best times I ever had was when I got rid of all my shit and just went someplace.
Right.
And took what I needed in my vehicle to live.
Right.
A sleeping bag, that old ass guitar over there, Yeah. A tent and whatever, and just getting rid of everything, just dropping it and just going and going to a new place where I didn't know anybody. Some of those were the best. You look at those, it was like you didn't have anything, you didn't have any money, you didn't know what you were doing. Every day was a crapshoot. But that's living. You know what I mean? Right. It is. It's like you were talking about with having all your money stolen and you've got a passport and a plane ticket and you're going to
a country I've never been to before.
And you got a CD player to give to the taxi driver.
Yeah.
I could just see it. One of those old Sonys like and
that was the thing. Like,
it's funny now. It's just all the music's right here.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing for me was like, I read some Tom Wolfe in college.
And
And he had this thing where he'd just go around New York and like hang out with homeless people. And I didn't really think of it at the time, but I
used to do that.
The big thing that I kind of got into was like a lot of my British or Australian or American colleagues at these international schools, they go to like the foreign bars where all the foreigners were. And I was like, man, I didn't come to Moscow to kind of hang out with other.
You want to see the gritty underbelly of shit.
So I would just go out and I'd go like hang out at these train stations or these like gritty little shithole bars with like really ropey people. And that's how I learned my Russian. I never really studied it. Yeah. I learned it on the streets. And then, it was really funny. When I started speaking, I was living with a girl and, it's kind of like Spanish. There's like a female way of saying things, a male way. And because I was just listening to how they were talking, the girls, I would speak like a girl. And because I'd listen to their timbre in their voice, I'd speak at a higher tone when I spoke Russian. And people just, they loved it.
Oh, really?
They laughed their ass off. And that was another thing that I understood too. To be successful, to learn a language, to fit in another culture, you have to be a risk taker. You can't be like, the people that struggled to learn language were the ones that fought really hard to say it exactly right. And I was like, people are cool.
You're not going to learn it from a book.
People are cool. Like if a dude came in here speaking German, right, and we don't know German,
I could pick it up.
We'd still want to talk to him. So like if he knew like 4 words of English and he could make a bunch of hand gestures, we're normal people. So we'd be like, oh, dude wants a beer, right?
But as you know, though, you've picked up once you pick up another language, then the next language, it's almost like you can understand. I find myself doing that because I learned Spanish much the same way. Like I took Spanish in college, right? But I never went to fucking class because I hated it. Because I'd be sitting there next to some fucking stupid broad that would say, "Como te llamas?" And you go, "Fucking shut the," and I would just quit going to class, and my teacher, who I also took a history of Mexico class from, would get on my ass in that class about why I wasn't coming to a Spanish class. And I was like, I'd say, listen, just give me the fucking test. And whatever grade I get on the test, let's just call it that, right? Like, do I have to, And he would always ask me, like, where I learned my Spanish, And I would always tell him it was on the north side because I always ran with those cats up there,
Right.
And that's where I picked it up, too, was like hanging out with these drug dealers and, guys that were into nefarious things, but it served me well down the road. And
Same for me.
And like when I got to prison, like I could tell, because it's Southern California, right?
It's mostly Spanish, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And most of them cats don't think that as a white boy that you understand. And I would play dumb. Like I would play dumb. Like at this point in time, I don't speak Spanish very well, but I can understand exactly what somebody's saying. I mean, I can watch a Spanish TV show and be like, and I mean, I remember playing cards. It was a couple of years back, and I was at my buddy's house and we were playing cards, and he had some employees from Mexico, and it was me and him playing these two guys, and they were sitting there telling each other what their hands were, right? Because they thought we were so stupid we didn't, and I just played dumb the whole time. I figured, okay, all I got to do is beat him over there, and these are his employees, and he doesn't speak the language. And we get done. I win everything. Right. These guys are pissed. They leave. And my buddy looks at me and goes, damn, you're a pretty good card player. I said, well, it's not that hard when the only person I got to beat is you. Right. He said, what do you mean? I said, you don't know what I said, those guys were sitting there telling each other their hands. Right. I was like, I listened to every bit of it, Right. And he's like, I was wondering how you were making those plays. And it's like, well, And it's funny too, because I know a ton of Hispanic cats that do that shit on job sites too. Right. They play that no English, and as soon as they want to borrow something, they can speak, and I always fucking look at them, and okay, but I never let on. Right. Until the right time, and then when you let on, that what they, what's going on, and then they're just like they start laughing, and all of a sudden you're I mean, there's a lot of construction sites. I mean, it's prevalent that you've got the drywallers are always Hispanic, the landscapers, Hispanic dudes, and they look at you like you're just a pinche güero fucking gringo, I mean, it's like, and you just sit there and let it go. Yeah. Let them talk shit about you, and you laugh when they're talking shit about your guy, but you don't say nothing. You just wait for that moment to finally let on that and then it's just like them dudes just crack the fuck up. They're like, oh, PJ fucking well.
Yeah, as you can imagine, I've done a lot of similar situations, even in like business discussions, where I've come into a room and they're like, oh, some American dude, right? And like, they're waiting for their boss, and they're like, well, we'll tell him this and this and this, and I'm like, well,
you're just sitting there listening. No, it's being dumb like a fox, man.
And then I just like when the boss comes in, I just bust out in Russian, and they're like,
oh.
It sets a tone. It sets a tone.
Russian is a very. Can you also write in Russian?
I could write. I read
a crazy ass alphabet.
It's very like a lot of characters are similar to English. I mean, I think the it's a very steep slope in the beginning when you're getting the alphabet down, right, and the rules down. But it's exactly what you see written is how it's spoken, and there's not a lot of exceptions. I don't think there are any exceptions really. So it makes it really easy to speak. But like I said, I'm a mutt. I learned my Russian on the street.
But that's the best way to do. That's the best way to go, though.
So I have some funkiness in my Russian, but I can I wouldn't be able to write a book, but I can write and I can read and I can speak fluently.
Well, when I watched you've got a YouTube video out there. Yeah, that's the Stop Fake News one, and I can definitely tell that's where you were at, because I can hear. When you're speaking English, you can hear the Russian inflection in your voice. I was like, holy shit, that's Nick.
It happens.
Because, I watched it the other, I was like, what? Because you could hear, it wasn't full on like Sergey. Right. But there were those inflections in your English. Yeah, no. So I could tell that you'd been immersed in the culture and
right. I mean, I brought up Anna. How is it in English? Is it Kornikova?
Kornikova.
Yeah. See, in Russian it's right. Kornikova, right? Kornikova. So you lose some of that.
Whatever happened to her?
I think she lives in Miami, but anyway.
Oof.
But it's interesting you bring up Stop Fake News, because there was that whole Russiagate thing with Trump and everything else, and I don't want to get into that, but what I saw from 2013, 14, all of the stuff that was happening in America, these troll farms, this misinformation, it was all tested out on the Ukrainians. So when I started to see a lot of the same stuff in the U.S., Like it was, maybe it was like a bit of a red cape.
They were goofy posts though, like Jesus is your friend, don't vote for Hillary. What do you know?
Or like Jesus and the devil arm wrestling, and one has like Hillary above him, and the other has but
Orange Man bad.
But at the same time, a lot of it was true, right? I mean, they found that Russian trolls actually organized rallies in Florida, Texas. So there was. I'm not saying that it was the reason Trump won. I think that got taken a bit too far. But those guys had a stake, and they were active, and it was painful for me as an American.
Still do.
It was painful for me as an American to see it. I mean, there's a great story. I don't know if you ran into it, but they were practicing in like 2010 in Louisiana.
Right.
They caused a scare. So there was like a natural gas plant or a chemical plant.
Yeah.
And they created this buzz that it was leaking. Right. And people were fleeing town before they really found out whether it was true or not.
Do you remember the old movie from back in, I think it was like the 60s, the Russians are coming?
Yeah.
And the submarine like crashes on the East Coast, and these guys are all running around the town. Emergency, everybody to get from street. And that was it. It was a red scare. I mean, and you remember us growing up. I mean, I remember in grade school. Yeah. Remember the Iowa basic test? I remember teachers like saying like, you guys need to focus on this because we have to do better than the Russians.
Right.
And it was, I mean, you were terrified of the Russians, and then you had movies like that,
Red Dawn. I played the Nintendo. I played the Nintendo game, Russia Attacks.
Yeah.
So it was a Cold War, but I think,
and it's almost like it's back to that. Almost. I mean, you still have people. It's crazy because you still have people like Rachel Maddow, and some of these idiot pundits out there that are still they won't let it go. And it's like, come on, just wrap it up already.
And I think if they're fixating on like one person or one political party, I agree with you. But I also think it's important to realize that this influence, I mean, there's been a lot of exposés in Ukraine, in America, about these troll farms in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, and they exist, right?
But what about, okay, on the flip side of the coin, how many elections has the United States fucked with? Because I think we take the trophy in that category because we have influenced way more elections than I think any other country on the planet.
If you look back at the history of the CIA in Central America, and that's all fair, I would just say, we came on and we're talking about Russia, and they have 100,000 people on the border. So, this is something that's been coming for a while,
and especially with social media. I think that's where, what you're talking about there. People. That's what's crazy right now is people take everything they see on social media. If they see it on there, it's true.
Right.
If I see something, I dig into it. Like I'm not going to just take some fucking stupid meme or a post to be true. And I see so many of my friends that will turn around and either retweet or repost something from Facebook that they see. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, like the big one was the one about the wall where they said that there was a wall between Mexico and I think it was Guatemala. Well, it was actually the wall in Israel. Right. And I was like, hey, dude, maybe you should take that down. Like I'd send them a private message. Like I wouldn't put them on blast like on their post, right? I didn't want to embarrass them. But I'd like send them a PM and be like, hey, dude, like that is not, you just posted something that's completely fucked up and, I'm like, I'm not trying to put you on blast, but like, you know, and I tried. I mean, and I'm sure I've gotten things wrong.
I certainly have. I certainly have, and I think.
And you and I have had our arguments on the, where we've talked greasy to each other, and but here we are, so it's all good. I mean, that's the problem though with the social
That's the problem of Facebook, and I think, and with chats and things like that. I mean,
chats are not. I think it's the post that people put out that more so than, and then it's the conversation.
Well,
because people get angry. It's like you get in your feelings, and then all of a sudden you got somebody that's like, boom, I'm
and then it's personal.
Hardcore fucking, this way, and then and then all of a sudden it's like now it's not even, nobody's looking at it, in a rational, viewpoint. It's like it's just like, well, you think different than me, and it's like the whole argument about socialism. And I mean, I hate that. We live in a fucking socialist country already.
Yeah, there's a lot of socialism here.
There's a ton of it. The police, the fire departments, the libraries, the fucking hospitals, the fucking school system, fucking, I mean, the fucking roads,
Yeah, no, I think.
I mean, it's like, dummy, you already live in a socialist country, you fucking idiot. It's like, fucking.
There's a lot of stuff.
And then saying democracy, that's the other one that gets me, man. It's like, dude, you don't live in a democracy, ding dong. It's like, you live in a representative republic, and even at that, with the gerrymandering, all the fucking, all the nonsense that goes on with that, it's like, maybe.
Yeah, well, the one thing I can say, coming back to all these different forms of communication, is first of all, if you see me sharing a mime, reach out to me and be like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Because there's no reason to ever share a mime. Right?
I try not to. I try not to ever do that.
But more seriously, I see it even with like our new team at Sleeping Giant, right? We have these guys that have been brought in this year. Most of them haven't worked on a mountain before. They're new working together. And when we put them in a room together, we get a lot of reasonable discussion. We get a lot of things done.
Right.
But we also have a group chat, and that I'm a member of, that I kind of see from now and then. Every now and then I comment, and I think what I see there is we get a lot of people writing manifestos.
Yeah.
Rather than listening to each other, and then I see it gets really aggressive. And I'm probably just as bad as they are, but that's just something where I'm kind of more watching it than I'm actively involved.
Right.
And I just see that, and that's why we kind of press them to let's get in a room. Let's look at each other, right? Let's not write manifestos to each other.
And that changes the whole complexion of things too.
Yeah.
Actually sitting there and talking to somebody face to face, and that's what I mean. I call it being phone tough,
right, on
the internet, because people. I mean, it's like you can say what you wouldn't say to that individual face to face, right?
I call it being a lion in email, right?
Yeah,
and a kitty cat in person.
And I don't know. It's funny and. Yeah, the memes.
And I'm not perfect. I fail it regularly. Right?
Oh, sure, I do too, and I'm the first to admit that I'm a jackass and an idiot. And I've gone out there and said things that I shouldn't say, and the next day gone, oh God, and I've sent messages to people and man, I'm sorry,
Right. Well, I think I got after you after the election, and then I came to you the next day and was like, dude, I was out of line.
Yeah, well, I came back at you with I got angry, and And I've been guilty of that. I've been like, you wouldn't fucking say that to my face if you were fucking sitting here, motherfucker, And it's like, and it's like, well, what are we arguing over? It's like,
is it really worth it?
And at the end of the, at the end of the whole scenario, it's and that's the thing. That's what's funny is that the whole arguments that people have about Republican and Democrat, this and that. And it's like if you actually sit down and talk to somebody that's on, the blue side of the fence, chances are. If you're on the red side, chances are you guys meet in the middle with pretty much most of the shit. It's just you've been inundated one side or the other, and I mean really people don't understand it. It's just a device to separate people, to divide us, and to stay in power. I mean, honestly, that's what I think it is. It's like, why in the hell don't we have a third party in the United States? I mean, they will not even allow that. I mean, look at Tulsi Gabbard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was behind her the last election. I was and people don't realize that. I get called a libtard and I get called a neocon.
Right.
And I know to me, that shows me that I'm on the right path. Because if I can get called both, then it's like, okay.
Things are working.
But I mean, I was totally behind Tulsi Gabbard. I'm like, listen, I was like, you want a female president, a woman of color? I mean, you're talking about a veteran, somebody that served as a medic. That's, I mean, she got completely out of politics. And I thought she was the most, to me, I thought she was the most viable candidate there was in the last election. I mean, honestly, because she understood the consequence of war.
Right.
I mean, she understood what was at stake and just a good person. And I mean, I had a ton of people that I was friends with that were staunch Republicans. Like, you fucking libtard. It's like, dude, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's like, look at the person, look at the individual, And I mean, I've always followed the band Widespread Panic.
Right.
And there's a song they sing called "Bust It Big." And one of the lyrics in that is, beware of the man who makes monuments to himself.
It's a fair line.
You know what I mean?
Strong line.
And
I would say, like, you know, you got to be careful because you're going to get me on my soapbox. That you're touching on some of those issues, but my thing, and I think what I've tried to position Sleeping Giant as, is one of the things I noticed when I came back, and you came back after a while being away. So
right.
I wonder if you saw some of the similar things. But if you go downtown, the houses are really small. And it's kind of like Europe in that you couldn't have lived in those houses and not taken part in the social life of town, because you got to get out of the house because you're going to stab your family being that tight together. Yeah. So you go to the church picnic, you go to the bar, you go out for dinner, you go to the
parades,
park. You go to
any
the social
events, football games, basketball.
One of the things that I think tears at the fabric of Cody is that it got so spread out, right? The South Fork is so developed now.
Yep.
And those guys can't really come into town because, you know, you can't really go in and have a few drinks and drive out. You know, that's just not the way it can be anymore. You know,
right.
You don't want that. But at the same time, and everyone, like, you know, I came back to see my friends, and, you know, for me to get people to come to town and have a drink is a Herculean task.
Well, yeah, and you've invited me a few times, and I don't do that anymore because in fact, I get pulled over. I get followed.
Really?
I go out to Walmart at, you know, after 9 o'clock. You go anywhere in this town after 9 o'clock at night. I mean, and me, I'm going to get followed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like,
but I know what you're saying, though. Yeah.
You know, I call guys and they're like, "Hey, come to my house.
Right.
I got like my own home cinema. I got a whole bar in my basement." But then, you know, you're missing that whole social aspect. You don't run into people. Right. You're not talking about. So, like, we can go on Facebook and shout at each other.
Yeah.
But then we never see each other in real life. And I think one of the things we're trying to do at Sleeping Giant is just make it a place that people can come and hang out, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know if we succeed, we fail, but I mean, that'd be something that I like to see because, you know, for all of Cody, it was always this place that had this live and let live attitude.
Right.
And there were a bunch of different weird people
when we
here.
Grew up, it was way different, man.
People were very much like, I came here to get away from other people. And, like, as long as I got my space, you know, like they say, there's like 5 square miles for every citizen of Wyoming.
Well, it was kind of like a do no harm type attitude. And I know when I moved back here, because I was gone for like 12 years. I moved back here in like 2006. And then I was working as a bouncer. Right. And I watched what was going on. And I mean, people were getting their tires marked. I mean, they were getting, just DUIs left and right. I mean, I had to tell the police, I'd walk outside, I'd be like, you can't do this. Like, well, yeah, we can't. And then all of a sudden they went from having the police station right down there in the corner by the courthouse to now we've got this huge monstrosity with SWAT vehicles and all. What do we need SWAT vehicles in Cody, Wyoming for? I mean, I remember getting thrown in jail the first time. I think I was 15. Right. You know, I was down there. It was like it was like Mayberry. Right. You know, you had like Otis the drunk in one cell, you know, and I mean, I remember all my friends got out, you know, and the old man was like, yeah, keep him there overnight, you know, and I'm like 15, you know. But I mean, they like, you know, they were laughing, the cops were and everything, you know, and I mean, I've been pulled over one time since I've been back, and I forgot to put my tags on my truck, and it went 5 days. Right, I'd driven all the way from here. I went up to see the Slayer farewell tour in Billings, and then went to see Primus in Missoula. Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, and you know, they played both nights at each spot, and you know, I got to meet Les Claypool and all that shit. Like I was telling you, I always have a way of meeting band. Yeah. But I mean, it was like November 5th, right, and the tags were in my goddamn console. I forgot to put them on. And I got this guy on my ass. I get pulled over. I got 3 fucking cops behind me over tags. Oh, wow. I mean, in a city, I lived in Seattle for like fucking 6 years and didn't have tags, insurance, or a driver's license. I got pulled over one time, and the cop just let me go. Yeah. You know, I mean, and it was one cop, and he was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, I'm trying to get home. And he's like, dude, look, your fucking tags are, you know, he's like, you got no insurance? Your driver's license is, you know, he's like, come on, dude. And then, he's like, where do you work? And I'm like, oh, over at Stodd's Baseball. And he's like, and so he tells me his name. And I'm like, oh, dude, I coach your kid, And I mean, he like let me go, I mean, here you got 3 fucking, they're like swarming me,
Yeah. Well,
and
I just think,
it's just like, it's a crazy, man. It's like, like my kid's been in trouble, for stupid shit. Like he's at the skate park and these girls call him from the girls' restroom and say like, hey, come in here for a second, Well, the line's been skewed with kids. And like when we were like, think about it, right? Like when we were in junior high, right? Think about walking down like 7th grade hall. If there were some girls in that girls' bathroom and they opened a door and yelled at you to come in, would you have gone in there? Maybe.
Probably.
I wouldn't have.
No.
I would have never even thought about it. My kid goes in the bathroom and they're lighting toilet paper on fire. So he pushes the door open and looks and sees the toilet paper on fire on the ground. Well, what's he do? Runs in there, stomps it out. And what happens? Karen comes in with her kid from over on the fucking playground. Sees my kid in there, calls the police. He gets a fucking, a malicious mischief fucking charge.
Oh, that's terrible.
And I'm sitting here in court, talking. I'm like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, the lines have been skewed so far that, I didn't ever think that was a conversation that I would have to have with my son. I just didn't think that was something I'd have to talk to him about. Like, you don't go in the fucking women's restroom.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean?
Seems like a standard logic rule.
But I didn't ever think that was a conversation we needed to have, and apparently we did, because he didn't think that there was anything wrong with doing that. And the way that our kids have been brought up, they don't understand that. When you look at a situation like what happened in Virginia with that, there was that female that there was a boy at the school that was wearing a dress and went in and he raped her.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so the school tried to cover it up. The father went to the school board meeting, and of course, think about it: if your daughter gets raped at school, and they try and cover it up, you're going to go to the school board meeting. And me personally, I'm not going to be. They arrest him. Huh. They send the boy to another school, and he immediately turns around and does the same thing.
Nuts.
Now, I'm not saying, and here's the thing: is like, I don't give a shit about transgender, whatever. I don't care. I don't care. It's not my, it's not my life.
Right.
I don't care if you want to be, if you're a female trapped in a man's body, and that's you, and that's how you feel comfortable, I'm fine with that.
Go for it. Yeah.
And that was the first incident I've ever heard of, because honestly, in the transgender community, there's really no record of any kind of sex crimes like that. This was the first one I know that I saw. But it's just situations like that just, and then the dude the dad gets fucking arrested. And then Merrick Garland puts out that fucking thing about, parents being, terrorists and shit, because they're angry at school board meetings. And it's like, well, I would be angry about that.
Yeah, well, I think, what I was, I think for me, like just this idea that technology it's brought us together in very cool ways, but it's also separated us because we're talking at each other, right? And I think, that's a tricky thing. And I think
COVID's definitely exacerbated that. Right. It's taken that to a whole new level because.
And I always tell people about, I don't know if you read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but one of my favorite books, and Mary Shelley was the daughter of a guy named William Godwin, who was like one of the first anarchists, probably the first libertarian, really. And then Mary Wollstonecraft was her mother. And basically they were living out of wedlock in the late 1700s. It was very kind of racy, right?
And very taboo.
Her whole book, after like living with them and not having a mother and seeing this kind of very bohemian lifestyle and being on this period when so much was changing in science, it's very similar to like this Facebook era and things. And she's saying like, hey, like it's great that things are changing and it's great that we have the freedom to do all this stuff. But we also kind of have to, slow down a little bit and remember that, there's still these basic kind of human things that everyone wants and needs.
Right.
So, I always think about that when I think about like Facebook and this metaverse. It all sounds very terrifying to me.
The metaverse is, I put out a post last night about something about the metaverse. And Mark Zuckerberg scares the shit out of me. Have you ever seen that dude? Did you see that dude in that hearing when he's drinking water?
Yeah.
Dude,
that was weird.
Fucked up shit, man. That dude drinking water is like, I mean, if you want to think about, like, I know that there's the lizard people conspiracy out there, but if you wanted to make a point that there's lizard people, and you showed a clip of Mark Zuckerberg drinking water in front of Congress, like, look at him. I mean, you want to talk about a reptilian?
Right.
I mean, good God. And then I remember watching that. He was in China, and all of a sudden he started speaking Mandarin, you know, and of course his lady is Chinese, but you know, I mean Mandarin Chinese. That's a very difficult language.
Right.
I think Russian and
I think it's
Chinese
very tonal.
but English is also. I mean, and like you were saying earlier with Russian, it's like how it's written is how it's. That's how it's pronounced. I mean, look at English. We have so many stupid fucking I before E except after C unless you're talking about received or you know what I mean. It's like there's so many goofy things. It's like no wonder people have a hard time. And then you get the motherfuckers saying, "Come here, learn the fucking language."
Yeah. It's kind of unfortunate.
It's like, well,
we're a melting pot, right? Like,
right. You know, and the bad thing is that I think is you know, and I've tried to get my son, you know, to get into doing some extracurricular like Spanish, you know, through different apps and shit on the phone because you have a lot of resources now that we didn't used to have.
Right.
You know, I mean, I remember he got in trouble a couple of years ago. I took his phone from him and I went and got a box of Funkin' Wagnall's fucking encyclopedia and threw it on the bed. I said, "There's your fucking, you know, there's your resources now."
Right.
But that's how when we had to write papers. I know when I was in college, I mean, it was you were in the fucking library
pulling up library
and you had
cards.
books piled up, and you know, you had to know the Dewey Decimal System and all that shit.
All kind of crazy stuff. Yeah.
I mean, we didn't. I mean, that's why I always
just think about how many phone numbers you used to remember. But
fucking A, dude. Yeah, exactly. And I was telling him like, dude, you got this thing right here. I'm like, you have the fucking world of information,
a supercomputer in your
right
hand
here. Like this is the shit we talked about when we were in like second and third grade. Like we would always say, there's going to be a day when we can talk with a device to other people and we can see each other, like FaceTime. I remember talking about that shit back in the day.
Yeah.
Saying, but it was a fanciful thought. Like,
can you imagine like talking with somebody on a screen? Yeah. Like
and now,
Star Trek was doing it.
Look at us right now. I mean, we're live streaming to the entire world right now through this.
Yeah, it's pretty
Who
cool.
would have thought that? I mean, we're sitting here, and I mean, look, we were on that screen. We're on this screen. I can put us on that screen if you want. I'll put us on that screen. I mean, with this screen, I mean, you know, I can put it on. It's crazy. I mean, it's a whole different planet, and it's unfortunate. I think that I think kids, you know, the younger kids, the youth are missing out on, you know, the things that we grew up with, like the whole get on your bike and fucking go find your friend. Just go. And whoever you run into, you hang out. Like I mean, I remember I'd take off on my bike and I'd go find fucking chicken, you know? Shout out Jesse Williams if you're out there. You know, go find chicken. And I mean, every time I see him, he's like, you know, he's always like, "You still got that old Predator?" And I'm like, "You still got your Diamondback?" You know? I mean, because we would always run into each other and just ride, you know, just ride your bikes, you know? There was no phones. There was no, it was like street lights came on and get your ass home for dinner.
Right.
You know, we'd play kick the can over at Glendale Park. There'd be 20, 30 kids out there. And, it'd be like a summer night after dinner, you know, and your parents would be like, "Please, can I go play?" You know, "Okay, be back." It's, you know, and we'd all go meet over there and we're playing kick the can, running around the alleys and shit, you know. Kids they don't have that anymore. There's a whole, I think, a lot of innocence that has been lost in children's upbringings. I mean, we used to get away with being a dumbass and you didn't go back into school on Monday and have, you know, a viral post on Crap Chat or whatever, and everybody'd seen it.
I think that makes it very tough to be a kid now.
I think so too, man.
Think about how many like dumb mistakes you made as a kid.
Right.
That would have been a problem.
Right. And maybe a couple of your friends knew about it and you're like, "Look, don't tell nobody about this," and you know, and it was like, okay, you know.
It was the same, you know, my parents were teachers and coaches and all that. Right. And I think, you know, from their perspective, it also makes it harder, right? So if you heard there was a party out at Red Lake, right, and like somebody got drunk, you heard about it, but you kind of had plausible deniability. You didn't see it,
Right.
but if someone brings that in on a video on their phone as a teacher or something, you gotta react, right?
Yeah,
and so I think it changes that dynamic, right?
It certainly does.
But I also try to temper that with this kind of feeling that my dad probably thought that we were all a bunch of pussies and that our life was really easy and we
Yeah, he did.
we didn't our innocence was lost by all this technology. And his dad probably
he'd
saw
sit
that
there and your dad do that,
Yeah, and I think
he'd give you that look
his dad
and
probably
you
thought
know that he'd whoop your ass in a say. He'd be like, fucking Mr. Piazza, and then he'd be like, yeah, fucking, he might be 50, whatever. He's still whoop my. It's like.
Well, and his dad probably thought the same about him, right?
Sure.
So it's a natural progression, right? It's how the world changes.
When I look at it too, because I sit there and look at like the mumble rap and the shit my kid listens to, and I'm like, this is garbage. But then I stop and I think, wait a minute, we listened to a bunch of dudes that dressed like chicks,
right?
Like you look at like Motley Crue and fucking, those dudes. You look
what
at that
was
shit.
going on? Yeah.
And so, we had the peg pants. We all had a mullet. We were a bunch of goony birds too. It's all cyclical, and it all goes around. But I guess it all changes. But I just feel like, kids have lost the opportunity to. I guess I saw it start happening after I got to college and talking to my younger brother. And that's when they first brought the drug dog in school, and then, it was like they're just clamping down. And I remember sitting down in the Chamber of Commerce, and somebody would come up with a keg of beer or whatever, and then somebody would run over to Witex and grab a truckload of pallets.
Go up on the mountain,
you'd have a line of 40 cars going up to Carter Mountain Access or going out to Buster's Playground.
Yeah.
And the cops knew what we were doing. But they let it go. They were just like, hey, kids are going to be kids. If they did catch you, they'd take your beer. I know for a fact there's a number of times cop bust you, take your beer. Fuck, they'd go park and fucking drink the shit. Now it's just, and that's why I let my kid get away. A lot of times I let him get away with shit.
Yeah.
Like people are like, dude, he's fucked. I'm like, yeah, I know. But sometimes a kid needs to get away with something. You know what I mean? Honestly, I think that's part of growing up. Is like sometimes you need to get over, right? Like you need to get over on something. Like not on certain things. It's like
I would say this. I'd say that I didn't realize it until I got to college, but when I got there and I saw that, because I always kind of held urban kids or suburban kids in this higher standard, because they go to the city. There was a mall. Mm-hmm. They could go to a Chicago Bears game. They could go to a concert, right? I didn't have that
amenities.
Yeah. But when I
got to go to a band concert at the band shell.
Yeah, I got to go out in the mountains and drink keg beer. Best case scenario. But the thing that I noticed was they had so much more parental control, right? Their mom was driving them everywhere, things like that. For us in that time period, it was pretty rough and tumble, right?
It was Wild West.
It was. I think that's the magic of this place, is that it gave me a lot of independence in that I was allowed a lot of freedoms that I saw my classmates in college had never tasted before, right? They were getting alcohol poisoning freshman year and going crazy on alcohol. I was like, guys, I've been through that already. Yeah. It's not that exciting. It was. So I think the independent spirit of Wyoming is a special thing, and it's part of the reason we brought our family back here, because we'd like to have them have a shot at that. This town, I think, did a great job raising me.
But the crazy thing is I hated it. I wanted nothing but to get the fuck out of here.
That's a normal thing, right?
But then I left, and I was gone, all over the place. It was 12 years I was gone. I think I came back when I was 30.
Right.
And I realized that I was living in a city. I was working 20 miles away from home, and it was taking me 2 hours to get to and from work every day. You're yawning, man. You got a big flight. You'll be sleeping on the plane tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it was weird how it came full circle, because all of a sudden one day it snapped in my mind. I was like, damn, I'm going back to Wyoming because I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of the bumper traffic that, every day just dealing with all these people and all this shit, and it's like, you realize that, and I work, with my kid, I think he probably feels the same way. Like he would want to get the hell out of here. That's all I wanted to do. Senior prom, you know what I was doing? I was down at the baseball park with the lights on, hitting off a tee in the batting cage.
Right.
And fucking 2 cops show up. I had the keys to the lights, I'm down there by myself. They come in, like, what are you doing? I'm like, hitting. They're like, it's senior prom. Why aren't you at prom? I said, because I'm getting the hell out of here, man. I'm like, I'm not smart enough to get a fucking a scholarship doing anything other than hitting this baseball, you know?
Right.
And they're like, but, they couldn't even like wrap their heads around the fact that I'm sitting down there, and that's what I did. I was by myself, just down there, just whack. It's because I wanted to get out of here so badly, but then I realized that it was like, this is not a bad, and now I would rather, there's no place I'd rather be.
I kind of feel,
I miss the amenities of the city. I miss being able to go out to a nice meal at a a boutique style restaurant, or to see a concert, or to,
No, I hear
but
you.
then it's like, I can do that if I want to. I can hop on a plane and go do it,
I hear that. I think, going back to your point about hitting the ball, one of the big things we used to do, Nate Drendel, Brad Gifford, Travis Hool.
Shout out to all you guys. I talked to Casey and Brad the other day. I talked to Hool not too long ago.
Casey was supposed to be in town today. I was hoping he was going to hit me up.
Well, him and Brad, Casey and Brad were supposed to come by here and be on the podcast. So where the hell are you two, you fuckers?
Where are you guys at?
Fucking assholes.
But, you had the key to the lights down at the Legion Field. I had the keys to the Schweitzer gym. So we used to go in there and play basketball till like all late at night. It was good mischief, right? It was a good thing. It was, it wasn't kids doing bad stuff, or, it was being out, in the community. It was
no, and I redesigned the weight room down there in high school for McDougal.
Right.
McDougal, because he's like, okay, file, can you take and, you're in that guy. I do that.
Yeah.
Take and go to the shed and take and do this, take and do that. So I drew up a whole plan, and I found all the machines and shit. So the new weight room, when I was a senior, that they put in, I designed all that, the
that's
layout
cool.
and everything.
I spent a lot of hours in there.
I did too, man. My senior year, I think at the end of the first semester, I had enough credits to graduate. I could have just left, but I didn't want to. I was in
a similar boat, man.
I'd spend my whole morning in the weight room, and then I'd go to Mike Riley's and do journalism, and he would just give me a pen. So Grosskopf and I would leave and go out to the bowling alley, play pool and drink beer. Wow. We were going to the bars at 16, 17, 18 years.
Well, yeah, especially, Todd was a big guy, so I can see how you could pull that off.
And we'd ride around in that little Fiero that he had. That thing was hilarious. I remember one night we were coming up by Livingston, and they'd plowed the snow up in the middle of the road, and he fucked up, and I centered that thing. We both got out and picked it up. Put it back on the road. Driving around that little thing. Or we went up to Bozeman for their what was it, their spring break or whatever. We went walking right into the high school, We didn't go to school there. We just pulled up and walked in. Next thing you know, we're out at Chico Hot Springs drinking beer, hanging out with chicks, and there were different times, man.
Living the dream.
It was different times, man. It was like, there was a lot of, it wasn't innocence, I would say, but it was, like you said, it was freedom. And it was, you had the, I guess the ability to go out and, do whatever we wanted. I guess there's some good and some bad to that, but.
There was just space to not do harm to other people.
Learning to fly, I guess. Like the old Petty song.
Yeah, exactly.
Learning to fly, but you ain't got wings.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know, man. It's a different planet. Yeah. It certainly is, and in the thing that I always, and like I've told my son, he's come out and asked me before I've been out there working in the shop, he's like, Dad, what am I going to do about UBI? And I'm like, what the fuck do you know about UBI?
What's UBI?
Universal Basic Income.
Oh, okay.
And he goes, well, I listen to some of the podcast. He goes, I listen in on the podcast, the stuff you listen to. And he's like, what's going to happen when everything's automated? I'm like, what do you know about that? He's like, well, I don't. He goes, what do I do? And I said, well, you come out here and you learn how to build things, learn how to make things, make yourself indispensable. I mean, there are so many young people that do not understand the value of a trade.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, they don't understand how you would even go about making this. They don't understand how you go about making that. They don't understand how. Every one of these frames in here, I've made everything in the studio. I've made. That's all.
Very cool.
I've made it all myself, and they're all from concerts that I've been to. And I've got signed fucking posters. Everything in here I've made, and it's like and I think that in the future, there's certainly a great amount of. I don't know if you saw the one up there behind it. You probably didn't see the one up behind the monitor.
No. Is that a picture back there?
Yeah, I need to move that because I actually won that at an auction. It's Smith Mansion.
Oh, cool.
And so I made the frame, but I had to have it, just because of Bucky. And
yeah, great guy.
Great guy. Bucky was, that kid. You talking about somebody that had balls? That kid. When I was 18, he was 16, and Fisher had a couple of rough games. He was a little beat up, so Bucky was catching. 16-year-old. We're playing in Laurel, and those guys they would get ugly up there, and it got bad that game, and we were tied up, and I hit one that went over the fence, hit the street. The ball hits the street, bounces. It should have been the game winner. The ump calls it a ground rule double. Said it bounced before the fence, right? So I get to go out and throw another inning. I'm throwing the whole game. I'm getting wore out, right? I get hit in the leg with a line drive, throw the guy out. I'm on my last juice, you know what I mean? And this character comes in and takes Bucky out at the plate, and I go at that dude. And they come at me, and I turn around, and that kid was, he was a hell of a boxer. And he's sitting there at 16 years old. He's sitting there just knocking the shit. It was benches clearing brawl. I was so proud of him. We got on the bus, and I always had the back seat in the bus. I said, Bucky, get your ass back here. Come here, sit down, man. And we sat there and had a chew.
Yeah, that's I wasn't here when it happened, but I heard about it.
I remember right where I was. I was working at First National Bank.
What a tragedy! I
was sitting there and I heard the sirens, and I looked over at one of my coworkers and I said, "God damn it! I hope that's not somebody I know." And then somebody came and said, "Did you know Bucky Smith?" I said, "Fuck." "Fuck! You got to be fucking shit." Yeah, that was a rough one. That one was because he was just such a good kid.
Totally.
And so when we were at a benefit. It was actually for Mike Jimison's son Sylvan. Oh, right. At the country club, and they had an auction, and Teresa and I went back and forth on that one. And I was like, I'm not gonna lose this one. Right. And anyway, I'll have to pull that. I should pull that down and put it somewhere else where you can see it now. I just put that monitor up there the other day, so.
Yeah, it's convenient.
But I
can look at myself and see how beautiful I am. So.
You're right, yeah. Sexy bitch.
Right. Well, yeah, man.
Anyway, I guess we kind of got off kilter, but that's the fun of this, though. Right. It goes off the tracks every time,
and it's good to catch up with you, man. It's been a long time since we smoked. Every now and then I'd run into you in the country club, but I haven't been up there for a while. Yeah, there was all kinds of craziness going on.
I quit going there because it just turned into a nonsensical fucking bunch of, I haven't played golf now in like 3 years, which I don't care.
Oh, really? You dropped off? I haven't played very much the last.
The thing, I was one of the guys that would, I'd write him the full check for the gold membership on January 1st every year, and then all of a sudden I'm being called a rogue member. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And then I go to a board meeting about something that was an issue, and all the board members, they vote me in to take the open spot, and the guy is like, "We'll never have a guy like him on the board here." I didn't really want to be there anyways. I just went in there to speak my piece, you know, and because they were just getting in petty arguments, and I was like, look, your guys' job as the board members is to become solvent.
Right.
Like you don't have to get it, you know, like you're running people off over this petty nonsense. It's like your job is to make sure that this place like pays its fucking debts and like, you know, gets flush. It's like you're sitting here playing these political games. And it's like, you know, and I sat there and listened to everybody scream and yell at each other. And I just sat there and didn't say anything. Finally, everybody's done. I was like, may I have a word, please? You know, it's like, but then the president was a guy that I had run out of the weight room at the rec center when I first got back out of prison. So he didn't want me, you know, I didn't even know who he was. Oh, that guy? Because, I mean, I was in there lifting and no one would even come in there when I was in there when I first got out, you know. And he came in and I was watching a Seahawks game and he changed the fucking channel. Well, having been in just been out of prison, you know.
Took that, yeah.
Dude, like, you don't fuck with the TV. Like, you know, the TV is like, dude, like, I'm the only one in there. You come in and he just comes in and I'm on the bench and he fucking changes the channel. I'm like, you know, I get up off the bench. I'm like, put the channel back on what it was, you know. I was like, I'm watching that. He goes, I don't care. I don't want to watch that. I said, put that fucking thing back on or I'm going to fucking beat the brakes off of you. How about that, you know?
That's a pretty weird interaction at the gym. I'm surprised he was so aggressive about the TV. I don't know who he is, but that's weird, right?
And the weird, I mean, when I'd go over there at that point in time, I mean, everybody would leave the free weight room when I'd come in there because, I mean, I was pretty, you know, pretty aggressive.
Pretty aggressive.
I wasn't aggressive. I just had an air about me that, like, you know.
Yeah, you were getting back used to. You were in a different world. Right?
Yeah, I was assimilating back into society. And I remember there was one kid. He was a younger kid, short kid, but he comes up to me and he goes, why you fucking look like you always want to kill somebody? I said, why the fuck you asking? You know, and he kind of like. You know, I said, you want to fucking get in on this or what? You want to, you know, so we started lifting together. We were running sprints, lifting, you know, and became friends.
Cool.
You know, and I mean, the kid had balls. He came up and said something to me, you know. I was like, I mean, I had to give him credit for that. And I didn't even understand, like, I didn't get it.
Right.
Like, I didn't, you know, because where I was at, like, I was, compared to the dudes, I mean, dude, you got guys that have been down for 20 years and all they've been doing is lifting weights. You got some bad motherfuckers.
Right.
I mean, you know, I'd go in there and get on the pull-up bar and I could do some crazy shit on there. But, I mean, I was in there with dudes that, you know, they pull up, push out, you know, turned upside. I mean, you know, dudes are just,
well, when that's
just ripped.
When that's your recreation. But, yeah, I mean, I think.
When that's all you got, that's your program in there. And that's where I got, too, in there. It's like that was my program. And if that shit got interrupted, then I was having a fucked up day, you know. And, I mean, it was all day, every day, just. I mean, I started my day off with 300 push-ups and fucking 250 burpees and, you know, run 3 miles and fucking get on the weight pile and get on the fucking, I mean, it was just all day out there. Just, you know, I mean, what else are you going to do?
Healthy, yeah. But
and then go to the library and read, and I was going to school.
Yeah, I mean, I think to go back to your original comment, I think one of the things that's been interesting for me and sometimes disappointing, sometimes kind of fun, but, you know, coming back to small town life after really not being involved in it, you know, I sometimes feel like I'm a bull in a china shop because I know a lot of these people from 20, 30 years ago, right? And I don't really know their story now and things like that, but I see they're doing stuff.
They don't know yours either.
And I'm always amazed by how quick they are to kind of, you know, draw lines between like, these are my guys, these are not my guys. Like, I hang out with them, I don't hang out with them.
Right.
You know, when it's a town of 10,000, it seems a little overdone sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, pretty trivial.
You know, but at the same time, you know, some of these beefs go back a long time, and I just don't know the history. So
it's
you know, but you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, hey, do you know this guy? And he's like, yeah, he's a real bastard. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay, you know, like I just, you know, it's tough to navigate sometimes.
Well, and I've run into that with people too, and I've run into people that I've apologized to because I didn't necessarily consider myself a jock, but everybody else did.
Right.
And there were people that I was a dick to.
Right.
You know, and I've run into them over time, and I'm, you know, gone and said, hey, you know, I apologize. I was an ass, you know, and that goes a long ways too, you know, to realize that, hey, we aren't the same people that we were.
Right, right.
you know, I mean, everybody evolves and becomes something different over time. You know, we're not the same. We're not the same dudes that we were.
1996.
I'm not the same guy.
Yeah.
You're not the same guy. Look at the experience you've had, man. I mean, Jesus Christ. Look at your fucking life is crazy, dude. I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, you've done amazing things, and I mean, you've gee, like you're saying, dude. You got on a fucking plane with a CD player, and you know, went to Moscow with nothing.
Yeah,
dude,
well,
you know what that? I mean, that's. Dude, there's not a lot of people out there. There's not a lot of people that would fucking take that route. Well, there's a lot of people that get on the payphone and try to call mommy and daddy and get back home. There's not a lot of people that would fucking give their CD player up and get on that plane to Moscow. Well, when you don't speak fucking Russian or Spanish and you're leaving from, I mean, dude, that takes some fucking guts.
Well, I appreciate that.
Seriously, dude, that takes balls. That takes like what's the word for perspicacity? You know what I mean? I mean, it seriously does. I mean, that's a really that's a sign of some fucking character, dude. Because a lot of people, most people wouldn't do that.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, the thing.
I mean, that's a hard way to go.
You know, the thing is, we've all had our experiences, man. You're having your ride, I'm having my ride, and it all goes different. I think.
Well, yeah, it definitely does.
When I came back and COVID was kicking off, I was pretty nervous about it, right? And when we were sitting, we were actually in Florida, and we were like, "Where are we going to go? We go back to Ukraine or here?" And I was like, "Look, I don't know, how this is going to work out, but I'll feel more comfortable if we're in Cody. I know those cats."
Yeah.
And it's a smaller place. I think we got like numbers are on our side. So, and then when I got back, I called up Matt Hall and I said, and I was like, "Hey, man,
Hollywood."
Yeah, I love that guy. And I think he's doing a great job. And I think, I just said to him, like, "Look, if there's any way that I can help, let me know." So that's when we started getting involved. And, we ended up buying those ventilators and masks and stuff. And And that was kind of a cool experience that I'd never done before. And then, when Sleeping Giant popped up and, your buddy Mike Jimison, Mike taught me a lot. He taught my wife to ski. And
he's a great dude.
A very positive.
And a great family, too. Taylor's awesome. I love their kid. I mean, I love that whole family. They're just really amazing people.
I think they're a very positive influence. And I think they took Yulia and I, my wife, to a different spot. They taught us a lot, right? Because I think we were caught up in a lot of things that they didn't care about. And we kind of looked at them and we were like, wow, these guys have like a totally different vibe. They have like totally different goals. Yeah. And it helped us, kind of like I was saying about going to another country. It was almost that where we were like, wow. And we kind of reassessed what we valued from being with them.
They have a place in Nicaragua too.
Yeah, I think they're there right now, right?
Yeah,
and, So
I love the shit out of both of them.
And when Mike and I got to talking, and he had all these ideas about the ski resort, and he just believed, right? He was like, "Look,
he always is.
This place can be better than it is," and I think he did a great job, and he kind of sucked me in. He sucked a bunch of people in, right? And I think where I'm at now is like we're just trying to keep that thing going and make it a resource for everybody, because I think if it shuts down, it'll be a shame.
And now that you're up there, I'm gonna start. I'll take you out in the garage to show you my snowboard collection. But
cool.
I mean, now that you're up there, I'd like to start getting back up there. And my son, I mean, he's an amazing snowboarder.
Well, look,
yeah,
man.
He's absolutely phenomenal. I actually need to wax his snowboard because he's going to Red Lodge tomorrow with the school.
Oh, cool.
So I got to go do that. When we get done here, I got to go out and wax his board up and get it ready to go. And it'll be the first time he's gone this year because you guys haven't been open.
Right.
And Red Lodge, I mean, I used to buy a season pass there and at Red Lodge, and then I'd get the what they call the Max Pass.
Right.
So I could go anywhere and anywhere basically.
You just used to carve it up everywhere. Well, I mean,
but
it's been a tough snow year for everybody, and we don't take any pleasure in seeing other people struggle with snow. But we're lucky because of where we are, and we have that shade on the north face. So we're doing probably a little better than some places, but it is what it is.
Are you open up there or no?
Oh yeah, we've been open since Christmas. So
every time I get on the website, it says closed.
It shouldn't.
I might have to pull that up.
But yeah, man. We're trying,
because I have your app right here on my phone.
Yeah, it should be.
Because we were talking about going.
Well, look,
the other day, and I looked and I was like, they're not even open.
We've been open since the Christmas break, but since you're coming back, and the biggest thing we want is to bring people back to Sleeping Giant. I'd like to offer you a season pass, my friend. Come up
Don't shit.
and ski on me, man.
Wow. Right on.
We need people like you up on the mountain.
I would love that. Hey, I'll take you up on that for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, because, I mean, Jackson and I were talking about it. Like, he and I were looking over Christmas break because I was like, dude, we need to go ride. And I'm like, look, here, I got the Sleeping Giant app right there.
There you go, man.
Let's see what it says. Because it said reopen 128 or to be announced.
Oh, wow.
See that?
Well, 128 is probably the weekend. So it's probably saying that we're closed right now.
But I thought you guys weren't you doing like night stuff and things like that? It says
Nah,
open lifts 0 to 3, open trails 0 to 49.
Yeah, because we'll open on Friday. So it's just saying we'll open on Friday.
Oh.
Maybe we should adjust that. It's
yeah, because
confusing.
that is confusing.
Yeah.
Because if those are open, it should say that they're open.
Yeah, well, all that'll say open on Friday morning. It just doesn't.
Right. It's just, okay, maybe that's, damn, no, that sucks.
That's helpful information, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, shit. If you guys are open, we'll be up.
Well, man, I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you being here, Nick.
I got to go.
I mean,
my wife's going to chew on me a bit.
I know you got a long flight. What are you flying out on the morning flight?
Actually, the noon flight, so.
Out of here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get to go to Denver?
Denver, Frankfurt, and then another hop.
Denver to Frankfurt?
Yeah. 11 hours of pleasure.
I hope you got I'm sure you're riding right, though.
You know, as I get older, the lay down bed on an airplane becomes very important.
Right. my ex-wife worked for SkyWest.
I know.
Yeah. And
my mom was friends with your wife. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And your mom's been over here.
Yeah.
And your mom and dad were at a reception of that, and they're really great people. And yeah, that was nice though, because we would always get first class. You know.
Nice.
I mean, sometimes you'd end up sitting in an airport for a day or whatever. But
you can't argue with free stuff. Right?
No, not at all, man. I never had any problem with it at all, man. I mean, it was no big deal. And then, it was always fun. I'd always, like being in first class, like you can tell people whatever you want. It's like airport bars, right?
Yeah.
You can tell people whatever you can be whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've told some,
we used to have
you
fun
sit in first class and be like, hey, all those plebes in the back. And you're like, the guy sitting there, yeah. I mean, that's the only time I'd ever want to get on a plane, like early, if I had first class.
Well,
I never have understood that mentality about people wanting to get on that fucking plane right away. It's like, dude, what do? You're going to go sit in there in that stinky ass thing? The air ain't working. I mean, you're sitting there next to some hacking old lady or a fat dude that, is flarms. Jim Jeffries does a great sketch about that, about having the middle seat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. But I would always just wait. I always wait. I mean, I remember, like, I would always fly from Seattle to Reno, but then I'd always have to go through Oakland.
Uh-huh.
And I'd sit there in Oakland, and on Southwest, right? And even if I had the first boarding group, I'd just sit there. There was a bar right across the same gate every weekend, and I did the same thing, And I was selling a bunch of weed out there in the day, I'd just sit there and wait, And I mean, I didn't care. It's like I never had anything other than carry on, Why get on that thing?
Why sit there for 45 minutes?
Unless you got first class. If you got first class, then you got beverages.
And you got your own space a bit more.
Right. And the drinks.
Yeah.
They'll just sit there and sling them at you. I'm like, yeah, double Belvedere and tonic. Come on.
I hear you.
Let's go. You 3 in by the time. Of course, I think the last time this lady was across the way and she was over there hacking, and I got back, and that was the first time I've been sick in a long time. I was thinking the whole time too. I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna get sick. You think about that tin can. It's just
and
then everybody, the masks. That's what's funny too, man. I mean, in my profession, I know exactly what size particulate those N95s will filtrate, and it's 320 nanometers as opposed to they're 120 and they're 320 and the virus is 120.
Oh, so 3 times.
I mean, it'll knock it down when you sneeze or whatever, I guess, but I don't know. And I don't need to get into that whole thing with the vaccinations and the COVID and all that shit.
That's probably for another podcast.
I know I've had it twice and it sucked.
It's not a party. I had it once.
Did you have it? Yeah. I got the Alpha and I got the Delta.
Oh.
And the Delta I got through in one day.
Oh,
thanks to the Joe Rogan regimen, which I actually got from a medical doctor, not from horse paste.
I actually.
It's funny how they're trying to shut him down.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy. I got vaccinated, double vaccinated, and then triple vaccinated, and I'll probably do it again. But everybody's got their thing. But
it's to each their own. And I'm certainly not anti-vax, but I do know that I have the antibodies, and I've had it twice, and so I haven't been vaccinated because the data that I've read and researched, and like I said, I try and research everything that.
There was actually a report the other day that against Delta, the antibodies were more effective than the vaccine, but. Right. But I'm happy to have both, and they call my type of immunity hybrid immunity. So I guess I'm going to live forever. I'm like the Superman. Yeah.
You're a wizard,
right? But man, I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being here, man.
I think this is a great thing.
It's good to touch base with you, man.
I think this is a great thing you're doing, and the one message I would have for you is don't hide out. You're saying that you don't go out that much and stuff. I think our community needs people like you, right?
Well,
so be out
just,
there chatting, just hang out.
I probably should. I've become a bit of a recluse.
Yeah, man. It's
I don't know. I mean, things change. I mean, I used to be a good time Charlie. I used to want to be in the middle of everything, and then after my experience, I just kind of try and sit back. And you're right. I should. I mean, I should. I mean, you're honestly right. I mean, I
like to just observe sometimes. But I go to the Eagles on Friday night for karaoke, and if you want to watch some magical karaoke,
I would love to see you get up there and fucking sing some.
I can bring it down.
Sing some fucking goddamn what's her face. I'm trying to think.
I do a pretty good U2. I do a pretty good Sinatra, but I think everybody does Sinatra well. So.
Fly me to the moon.
Highway. So anyway.
Tom does a great Chris Isaac, though.
That's a great song. And
I couldn't believe it.
That's what's fun is because the same people kind of show up every Friday, and they all have their hits, and I look forward to it, and it's great. I think it's been really fun because a lot of those guys, they work at restaurants and stuff, and then they come over after they get off. And I think that's a great crew, and it's always fun, and they're always,
Yeah, no. The thing I don't like is the cigarette smoke, man.
Yeah, it's a killer.
I used to be. I quit smoking a long time. Anymore it's just like, I mean, I can it's just I don't know, like leaving and stinking. I mean, it's just after quitting. I mean, I smoked for a lot of years,
right?
And after stopping, it's just like after I quit, man, it's just like I'm just like, I mean, I don't smoke pot anymore. I don't smoke nothing. I mean, nothing.
There you go.
I just have my beverage.
Well, there you go.
A beverage a day will keep the doctor away. All right. Well, hey, Nick,
I'm sorry to jump off, but I gotta go say goodnight to my kids before they fall asleep, man.
It's a pleasure to have you on. You have safe travels, man. Stay in touch, all right?
I'm
going to give you my phone number before you leave. Everybody, Mr. Nicholas Piazza.
Thanks for having me on, man. It was a treat.
Friend of the show, and very happy to have him. Great privilege. So thank you, my friend. All right. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen. We out of here.
Yeah, man. Sorry, I got to go.
There's no controlling me. I sold my soul and stole the gold from royalty. I'm locked and loaded till the motor overheats. I'll rock the boat in seas I'm not supposed to be. The Holy Ghost is in my broken bones, and heaven only knows what being poked awoke in me. The homes of those who tried to slow my roll and throw me to the wolves will turn out burnt and smoldering. I'm filling the coffins with everything that I wanted, and then I'll drag them behind me so they will not be forgotten. I hit the bottle so often that when I did hit the bottom, it didn't hurt even a bit, but now I proceed with caution. And I've been haunted by rotten bodies. The path that I plotted been full of haters and demons. I burned a bridge when I crossed it. I got $1 in my pocket that I'm saving just in case I get to where I'm headed and I still need change. I feel the ghost of rock and roll take hold of me. An overdose of violence.